Before the Rings of Power, there were the Silmarils. Before Sauron, there was his master Morgoth. Before Aragorn and Arwen, there was Beren and Luthien. Join us as we explore Tolkien and all the ages of Middle-earth with your hosts from theonering.com, Jonathan Watson and Michael Grumbine.
You know, it's been a minute. It's been like 3 weeks since we've seen each other, let alone talked to each other. I guess we texted.
You look just as good as ever, sir.
Oh, well, you still look younger than me, even though you're older than me. So
Younger,
it's the hair,
younger and fatter. But yes,
Kids,
the hair saves me from a lot of situations. So
yeah, I just got gray hair at 28. What can I say? I'm the Steve
you
Martin.
can say what you just did.
Lord of the Rings podcasting.
You have an old soul, which apparently makes itself manifest in your hair.
Yeah, thank you. Well, everybody, this has been a little bit of a delay finishing out the unfinished tale of Aldarion and Erendis, the Mariner's wife, which we've renamed as a longer story of just the Mariner, because you can't just have her wife because she dies at some point. I mean, sorry, I just spoiler.
Spoiler? I don't know. That's a spoiler.
But we're here to finish. We finished seasons, because the way I did this, in order to break it up inside my own head, I thought about it as an episodic television show that would span 6 seasons. In the first episode, we went over 3 seasons. In this episode, we'll go over the final seasons, along with some final thoughts in our extended podcast for our members. But it has been really, really fun. I reviewed this, because I reviewed it once today again, and edited a little bit more, and hopefully tied up a few more little ends that I thought were left hanging. But I know there's going to be stuff in here that I missed. So please, you may interrupt me at any time, Michael, as we go through finishing the story of Aldarion and Erendis. Doing what Amazon couldn't, which is writing the novel Tolkien never wrote. Actually, he wrote this. We're just embellishing in little places here and there. Everything that we do is true.
He mostly wrote it.
Yeah, he mostly wrote it. Yeah, but every character is true to what Tolkien wrote. Every motivation, I believe, is true to how Tolkien intended it.
And that's so funny. You know, it's one of those funny things that I know we've kind of skirted around this in previous episodes, but when you think about it, how hard is that to say? Like, why is that so difficult to say? We're just going to write a story and we're going to use our creativity, and it's going to be a story that fills in the things that Tolkien never talked about, but we're going to stay true to him.
Yeah.
That's the point. We're going to stay true to him.
See, the problem when you do that, it forces you into a place where his message is more important than your message. And so I don't think that they're willing to abide by that.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. That is the problem. But should that really be a problem if you're writing?
Well, no, it shouldn't be a problem.
If you're finishing his story, then why?
To them.
It's just so weird.
Yeah, I know. Well, guys, let's just jump right into it. But before I do, of course, guys, if you want to get the extended podcast, we're actually going to be talking about how a couple things that the folks in our Discord chat, which you can get for free by becoming a member as a famous freeloader. Just click the link below at the top of the show notes, or at the top of the description here on YouTube. You can become a freeloader. You can become a member of Discord, not get access to all the channels, but some of them. It's just $4 a month, and the first month is free. I'm actually gonna set this up on Patreon too, so it'll be $1 more expensive on Patreon, because they take their pound of flesh. And so I'll set that up. I'm hoping by the time that this is up. If so, there will be a link down below for Patreon, and you'll get all the same stuff in Patreon that you do if you become a member here. It's just going to be $1 more. So it'll be $5 on Patreon, $4 on theonering.com/members. If you are a super person, an amazing person, and you want to go above and beyond, you can do what Harrison, Adam, Lynn, and Rich do. And they become sponsors more than just members. We've got a lot of members, but just 4 sponsors, and they go above and beyond the call of duty in order to support Exploring Tolkien. And we really appreciate them. So go to theonering.com/member. All right. Oh yeah, and the extended edition, I didn't mention that. We're going to talk about pipew-eed, something I missed, and the pukel men, the Druedain, and how they might have fit into this here, because SER in our Discord chat brought that up today, and I was like, oh, wow, something I didn't miss, because it was also unfinished apparently. But we'll get into that. Pipew-eed and the Druedain, and how they could actually directly relate to this story. So, all right. So we ended season 3 with the betrothal of Aldarion and Erendis, and his leaving to go on his 6-year journey where they agreed was it really going to be 6 years? It was going to be shorter. Let's be honest. It wasn't really going to be 6 years. But he would go for a bit and they'd come back and they would get married. So that's where we ended it. There's already known problems at Vignalande. Vignalande was mostly destroyed the last time he was there.
Vignalande, remind our readers, our listeners.
Their foothold in Middle Earth. It's the place. It was a harbor. It was a place for them to come with their ships and set ashore. So this was this was like, think of it as like, we're going to put the lighthouse here and we're going to put the docks here and we're going to be able to this is the place we're going to come to and we're going to set foot.
Right, Númenorian outpost number 1.
Yeah, and it's on Gwaith and Ethel. Is that the name of the? Is that the name of the river? So just kind of think of it as, is it? I can't remember what it is in the Lord of the Rings. Is it the Baron Dúin? No,
it is the river that, since everyone knows this scene, the crossing of the Bruinine. If you carry the Bruinine River down,
Bruinine, that's it. Yeah.
If the River Bruinine if you follow it past, of course, the crossing where Frodo confronts the Witch King and is being chased by him, and Glorfindel drives the Witch King and the Nazgul to their ruin in the ford. So the ford of Bruinine is actually the ford of a river. So that river, if you carry it all the way down, and Jonathan is helpfully showing us on the map, until that river joins with another river, which would be in Austin Aethel, actually, because that's the big,
that's where Celebrimbor was, right?
Right, the big high elven stronghold in Middle Earth. One of them was, anyway. But anyway, continue on past there.
All right. So, sorry, go ahead.
And you end up at Vignalande at the sea, which we never see in Lord of the Rings, but it is in fact downstream from the fort of Bruinine.
All right, so that's where we end up. Everything that he's set forth there has kind of been mostly it's been destroyed. He's left some people there to hopefully rebuild it because he's not given up hope. There have been rumors of a king of men of some sorts that the elves seem to have more knowledge of, and he does, and he's wondering what's going on, and he feels a little bit like they're not being completely truthful with him about everything, but it's not a problem yet. It's not like the end of their relationship or anything like that between him and the elves. So season 4, I think that's good. Do you think there's anything I missed in the recap?
No, I think you're good.
Yeah. Oh, and I want to make a point. Like, the one thing that we set a little bit more of a emphasis on in this is that the line of the kings should be the line of Elros, and Erendis is not of the line of Elros, and so that's a problem between Erendis and Meneldur, the king, and that is one reason why Saranto, he believes there should be a line of Elros. He's not too happy. Also, he sees the problem with that. Saranto is essentially a suitor, what will be a suitor of Ancalime, which will be Aldarion's daughter. He's the grandson of Meneldur, so he's the son of Eiliniel, a sister of Aldarion. So he is essentially the same age of them, but of Ancalime, but he was born far earlier. All right. So here's how season 4 begins. It begins with what we see is now Vignalande is completely destroyed. He has left Númenor. Aldarion has left Númenor. He comes up on Vignalande, and what he left there in the hopes of rebuilding is now completely gone. Like it has been razed and burned, and what he sees are the bodies of his men strung up now. Right there's like something is more than just the winds and the waves destroying it. There's an actual evil at work of some sort, and there is no welcome anywhere on these shores for him. The men that he had a relationship with earlier, that's over. They are not welcomed at all, and in fact, now there are some serious skirmishes with these locals, as they do still have to set ashore because they want to feel what's going on. He's still not giving up, right? He's still not. He still sees the elves as his friend, right? Círdan is kind of a father figure to him still, and so it's at this point that he learns in more detail that there is a Lord of Men that has arisen on the east, and clearly And the way he learns that, I don't know. I don't have all these scenes all set out, but clearly he hates the Númenorians, right? Like this is something that like he has a distinct dislike of them, and so he's raising things to the ground, and so that has been now transferred onto his vassals, whoever this king of men is. And so this was his goal, just to destroy anything that the Númenorians built. And so it's at this point that he heads up to Ostanethel to meet both Galadriel and Celebrimbor, to discuss with them, and at the same time he's fighting off things, and we find that this problem is not just right there in Vinolande. It's actually gets further up into Eregion and on the borders of the Elven lands. It's here that I think would be a good place to introduce one. The road to Khazad-dûm at this point is also being built, or is built. I can't remember if it's finished yet at this point in Tolkien. We'd have to find the timing, but I believe it's right around here. And so we could introduce Narvi, because I think the dwarves will have a role here, because Narvi and Celebrimbor are they find themselves, they learn from each other, and they do things together. And so he learns from Celebrimbor and Galadriel and Narvi or any other dwarf lord, if we want to throw them in at this point, that this Lord of Men has risen quicker than they anticipated, even though they'd heard of him, and they've seen their attacks increase. And it's at this point that there's some distrust brewing between him and the elves, right? That there's something they're not telling him, that he really can't. He feels like there's the trust that he had engendered with them before is now being lost because of them somehow being unwilling to tell him these things. All right. So what he does, he decides to go sail up to Círdan, because Círdan is his father figure. Right? He's the one he has, I feel like, the best relationship with. Círdan taught him how to build ships. He spent a lot of time with him, probably more than any other elf. And on the way, he's not only attacked on land, now he's being attacked on the sea by some ships. And he fends them off, right? There are some losses, but his ships, they do fend them off, and he reaches the Grey Havens. But Círdan does not give him any more information. We learn that Círdan essentially has been told by Gil-galad, you cannot share information with the Númenorians. This is not their fight right now. This is not what we're going to worry about. I don't know how much detail we get about the fight that they have with the Lord of Men at this point, which we will eventually learn is the big baddie. But Círdan, his relationship with Aldarion is strong, but his relationship with Gil-galad is stronger. And he knows he's going to trust what Gil-galad wants him to do, which is don't say anything at this point. So Aldarion does not leave on the greatest of terms with Círdan at this point either. Things are getting worse. And he decides to return to Númenor. And so let me make sure I get the year right. At this point, we see him return. He returns in 869. Right? This is now 8 years. He's been there a long time. This is Vinolande. The attempt to rebuild is still there. It's not easy. People are dying. The relationships he had in Middle-earth are fraying. And so he goes back to Númenor because he's got a woman he actually loves there. And that's the one thing that he can return to that actually is more secure even now than his relationships with what he thought were the elves, or what he thought were his friends in the elves.
Yeah, I like how you're focused on his turning back is kind of affected by, I wouldn't say a product of entirely, but affected by the deteriorations of the relationships in Middle Earth a little bit. Anyway,
yeah,
a lot in the case of the men. One of the things you could do with the Vinolande situation is he could hear whatever rumors we're going to put in about the new Lord in the East from descendants of the men that he had put in place. That he had known, and maybe they're not willing to like openly support him, but maybe they give him shelter from a surprise attack or something. But then they can't have anything else to do with him because of it puts
that
family in danger or something. But it shows like some effect from the past efforts, but also a complete deterioration of that relationship with the men of that region.
Yeah. And it's kind of, I realized writing this, like this season is a lot of deteriorating relationships. So it's kind of a downer. There's very little winning in this one. But you get that sometimes. That's just the nature of a tale, of a good story.
Especially tragic tales.
especially tragic ones. All right, so as expected, when he returns to Númenor, Aldarion's long absence is felt by Meneldur. Meneldur is not happy because he's itching for an heir. It's been a long time. They've been now betrothed. What is it? I believe they said it was 3 years after betrothal the marriage should happen.
Right, that was the tradition of the Númenorians.
That was the tradition of the Númenorians. And it's now been 11 years. Yes, 11 years. 858 to 869. So he's itching for an heir. Finally, I'm not going to go into the details of the relationship between Aldarion and Erendis because that's all fleshed out in Unfinished Tales, and I'm only finishing what's unfinished. So Aldarion and Erendis do get married. There's other relationship things that we can take directly from the story and put that in there, particularly when it comes to something that we talked about last time when we were going over this, in that the elves from the west, we'd like to see a little bit more of them, get them involved a little bit more, because at their wedding, they are given certain things like the birds, the tree, and an Eldar ship to travel around the coast of Númenor as they do there, because they go to the different cities after they're married and visit them. But Erendis can't hide her dismay at the ship. She's not happy. And I think that would be a great scene, like where they give her a ship and she's like, a ship? A ship. And so I feel like there's
Thank you.
Yeah, right. Right. So she's obviously fine with the birds and the tree, especially the tree, but the ship, not so much. So they are happy-ish, I would say. But Saranto is still sowing some seeds of discontent with Meneldur, pointing out how nothing good can come with an heir who's not a full descendant of Elros. That's his role to play. And I don't want him to appear like a Grima. He has a desire to see Númenor do well, and he sees it as the land of gift that was given to them, right? This is something we do not throw away lightly, and he feels that part of that is the need for a full heir of Elros. That is the deal. That is the way that this place is going to move forward. And because of that, he sees Aldarion no longer like revere the Valar, right? He's already in that realm of like, he doesn't care. He doesn't look back. He doesn't care about having the Oiolaire on the ship anymore, right? So he sees a big problem with him being the heir to Númenor, particularly with Erendis being his wife. After a year, I believe it is. Let me get this right. 3 years, and Calimé is born, and Aldarion in that time is growing restless. Erendis and Aldarion are growing restless together because she can't stand really being in the city with the kings and all the hubbub around that. Right. And then when Calimé is born, he finds this even more troubling because now she's like an anchor to the land. And he is angry, but not angry at his daughter. He's more angry at himself for feeling this way. Like it eats at him that he cannot get away from this feeling that he's anchored to the land. And now with his daughter, it's just not leaving, right? This is the vision that he had, the vision that chased him of the growth of Númenor is not like it's being anchored to this land, and it can't grow if it's being anchored. And so the vision is being essentially destroyed by his daughter. And he hates that he feels that way, but he does feel that way. So I want that to be a little bit more of a conflict, not like I hate my wife and my kid. I want it to be more of an internal thing.
That's interesting. All right.
I don't know. You can disagree if you want. So he leaves with a harsh farewell with them right after that right where he picks her up and he sets her down, and he's out. He's gone. He's moved on, and he leaves. Let's see. This was then year. Oh no.
Are we still in this season or what?
Hold on a sec. Yeah. That's the end of the season. This is yes. So here's what happens. So let me rephrase this. So and Calimé is born. He is restless. There's a distance now between him and Erendis because of Calimé that just makes it grow even wider. She's also more focused on her. But he also finds that, right, she's an anchor to the land. So he goes and builds Hirlande. That's the way he's trying to get rid of that feeling. And so that takes time, obviously, it takes years, but it just doesn't make anything better. And so we get that scene of him picking up his daughter and then setting her down and then just saying farewell and leaving them. and
Right.
it's a rough scene of a dad just leaving. And this is a 5-year voyage. We don't learn a whole lot in the Unfinished Tales about what happens here. So I thought this would be a good point to actually do a little bit of a time jump and not really worry about this voyage, because we do a lot of back and forth between Numenor and Middle-earth and Numenor and Middle-earth. And I feel like we can just sort of cut out this particular voyage to Middle-earth.
Okay.
And that's where season 5 ends. He sets out on the voyage. All right. Season 4. Anything you want to go over about that? Any details you want to look at?
Interesting. Yep. Not as much. I actually have some things I'm going to say, but they belong in the member section for all you freeloaders, because they have to do with a question that was asked to us by one of our members. It's a really good one. So I have an idea for that there. But one of the things, because you are leaning in the story more so than the original written story to Aldarion's relationships with the people of Middle-earth in the voyages. I mean, which I think is wise, because you have to have more content than Tolkien gives us, and we know that he's on those voyages, and so it makes sense to talk about the relationships and what happens more. One of the things I thought was, in his, we know that the primal driver of his leaving after his marriage and after the birth of Ankalame, the primary driver is always this sea longing in his heart, right? But the proximate driver could be something that, and Tolkien doesn't mention this, but it would be realistic, especially given the fact that you have him being attacked on the seas between Númenor and Middle-earth in your previous season anyway. There could start to be raids from, occasional raids from some of the corsairs or the men who are under the sway of this king, this Lord of the East, or at least they know of him, or their culture is influenced by him. But the people that will later become the corsairs of Umbar, maybe there's something else other than just his longing that's driving him to the sea. Maybe there are events that both threaten some of the peoples of the coast of Númenor, but also drive home the fact that, and remind him of his relationships in Middle-earth.
You mean raids on Númenor?
Yeah, or ships. Maybe it's not Númenor itself. Maybe it's the Ventures.
They could encounter some things,
right? And then so tales of that. You can even have a ship battle. Where the Númenorians come out the better, because of course they're better. They're superior, both in their stature as well as in their abilities on the ocean. But that can drive the story. It can be a thing that's reminding him of Vignalonde and the destruction and the rise of this king, and it sort of, maybe some of his guild of venturers come back with some trinkets, or some sort of insignia from these men that reminds him that there's this whole thing going on, and the men in those areas are being affected by something that's evil, something that's dragging them down. And
like a tattoo on Galadriel's brother, Finn. Sorry, had to get a
not like that.
Hey, I also want to point out, I actually misspoke here real fast, that we are engaging in the voyage. I didn't review this properly, but we are engaging in the voyage, and we will get to Middle-earth with this voyage on the Hero.
Okay, good.
So I don't want you to go into that.
That's an odd switch, because I think we do want to know what's happening in Middle-earth is the draw.
I I changed some things around today, and so I was going off my memory, and this here's now switched. So yes, he does do that, and returns to Middle-earth. All right,
cool. All right,
season 5. Okay, Aldarion returns to Middle-earth, and what long ago, when he hoped, like, these cities of the men on the shores, or the men that he met, like the relationships he had long ago with the men of Middle-earth, like he saw these cities as actually slightly improving as time moved on. Now they're just like the people there, they've just descended into a serf-like state, right? They're just vassals, they're just serfs, they're just the lowest of the low now. And so things not only on Vignalonde have gotten bad, but now he's seeing the land that the people are on itself is descending. It's becoming less great, and so he sees these men even becoming less of men in a sense than they were, right? They were on an upper trajectory when he first met them, and now that clearly has turned and they're on a downward trajectory of some sort. Not only that, but there is now fewer men because these men are being recruited into an army in the east, and that's really concerning to him. So at this point, he decides to sail up the Gwathlo to Ostanethel, and is surprised to find Gil-galad there. But it's at this point that he does tell Gil-galad of his marriage. They have a good conversation about his desire for a Númenorian foothold that has proven obviously completely fruitless so far, and that he wants to make sure that his future heir will see to it that the bond between Númenor and the elves remains strong. And so they actually strike up a better relationship. Their distrust is put a little bit behind them in the promises that Gil-galad gives him, though just verbally. And it's then decided that, though, with this news of this army that's growing and with all the problems that they're seeing, they decide to push eastward with their own army. And the dwarves also, we'll get the dwarves involved at this point. We'll have them like push out a little bit from Khazad-dûm. That's just a small amount, the kind that appreciate Narvi, appreciate Celebrimbor, because they know that if the elves are encumbered by the armies of some great force, then they will also eventually get hit there too, even though they could just retreat there. But at this point, there's a good relationship. All right, so Aldarion finds now that he's battling directly the descendants of these men that he knew in season 1 that we talked about, and he's all the time he's troubled by this. Like I would like to see like a place that he found ennobling at some point in season 1 is now completely in ruin as they go to battle in season 2. Like not in ruin because of battle, but in ruin because of what the people have become. And these just vassals indicate that there's a bigger problem in the east again. And so it's at this point that Galadriel, Celeborn, and Gil-galad confirm among themselves this is not just a king of men, this is almost for sure Sauron. But while Aldarion suspects something like this, the elves won't confirm it to him. They are still holding their cards close to the vest. And obviously there has to be a reveal to this because this is very frustrating to Aldarion. However, Gil-galad smooths it over. They have a good rapport. And he says, you need to deliver this important letter to your father, the king. And it is at this point that, I need to deliver to the king, not to you. You are not the king, right? We hold these things to be important. And so he says, do not worry. This letter you will find things to be true that you probably already have some sort of knowledge of. There'll be some confirmation there, but he needs to deliver it to the king. All right.
You could have an interesting dialogue without Aldarion there, which is a conversation between the elf lords about what they should reveal to the men of Númenor and what their hopes are for them.
I like that.
You could introduce different viewpoints, like Galadriel's viewpoint versus Gil-galad's viewpoint versus Celebrimbor's viewpoint versus whatever Círdan's viewpoint would be.
Yeah. Círdan's not there. He sticks
right, but it would be Gil-galad telling about a conversation with Círdan.
Oh yeah.
And because Círdan's widely respected amongst the elves, and obviously a great lord because he receives one of the rings, so he has one of the rings at this point, right?
Yes, right. Mm-hmm.
Or does
no, the rings aren't made yet.
Oh yeah, sorry. You're right.
You're about 600 years off.
Yeah. You're right. So anyway, but he's widely respected enough that he's going to receive. Okay, wait. Rings when first given are given to Galadriel, Gil-galad, and Círdan. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, Círdan gives his to Gandalf.
Yeah. So having Círdan's voice somehow in that kind of council. But anyway, it gives you a sense of like different perspectives on the elves themselves are not this united voice. They're like, but they have different views of the Númenorians and what their future might hold. You could even have there be a prophecy show up of some sort.
Yeah, I was toying with the idea of making Galadriel the commander of the Eastern armies, but I decided against it for this.
The Eastern armies of Sauron, you mean?
Yeah, before she's commander of the Northern armies, she becomes commander of the Eastern armies.
Right.
All right. So Aldarion,
as long as she gets to kill some ice trolls.
Yes, right. Yeah. We'll work them down somehow from the northern Blue Mountains,
or maybe they'll just be the Eastern trolls of some sort.
Okay, so he smooths this over. He has this important letter he needs to deliver, so he goes home to the king, And we also find out at this time, at this point we can also switch over. Before he returns, we show that Erendis has removed herself to Emeria along with Ankhalime. She doesn't want to be in the king anymore, or in the capital any longer. She's not made for that royal lineage. Yeah, you do it at the same time. Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to be bouncing back and forth.
Yeah.
You're going to see the scenes because we have a lot of scenes, and you have to show. I mean, it is kind of a depressing story, right? Because you're going to show the arc of Ankalime's youth, and there's some of the funny stories like about the shepherd boy and things like that.
Absolutely, all those remain.
But there's also like the overarching, like Ankhalime doesn't even know that her father's Lord Aldarion. She has to kind of learn it from someone else. And
yes.
And her mother's all bitter when she brings it up, and you see kind of the depth of Erendis's I don't know, single-minded bitterness towards her husband and its effects on their child. But anyway, okay, so you are going to be cutting back.
So you do, and you do want to show her, her descent into, not despair, but like she can't live in the capital anymore without her husband, the king. She's just hanging on to other people. Like she doesn't have any. There's no reason for her to be there, and so you do identify with that in some ways. But she's growing to hate men more and more because Menelder doesn't really like have a great relationship with her. Really, she only had a great relationship with her mother-in-law, and that's not enough to hold her there. So and we get through some of those things, some of those other things that we see in Unfinished Tales with Hallacar as the shepherd boy and things like that in Emeria. All right, so Aldarion returns with a letter from Gil-galad. He meets Erendis. And he will ascend the throne at this point, right? We find out the letter is given to his father. His father says, I'm not going to handle it. You will, Aldarion, and you'll be king. And so he does ascend the throne. So there's a lot of scenes that go on in there. I just didn't flesh them out because they're fleshed out in Unfinished Tales, essentially.
Right.
So he then, once he gets to be king, he returns to Middle-earth again.
Okay, are we still at season 5?
We're still at season 5.
Okay.
Yeah. He finds out from Círdan. Yeah, I'll tell you when we're in season 6.
Okay, because the big blow up. Okay, you said so the big blow up between him and Erendis has happened then.
Yeah, between Aldarion and Erendis, yes.
Yeah, and Aldarion's become king. So because you got a lot of there's a lot of material there that fill out.
I mean, you might need to fill this up in even another season, or maybe you cut out other parts.
I don't think so. I think you have enough, but it does make a full season because you do want to. I think you want to lean into, like, this is the crux of the total breakdown of the relationship between Aldarion and Erendis.
Yeah.
So
and these last 2 seasons, since I initially decided to do it at 6 seasons and I had my initial points, like I can see where you'd want to maybe split things up a little bit differently after going through it. But since nobody's paying me to actually do that here in a show somewhere, I'm not going to go back and re-edit everything so that it follows a different path. All right.
Right. In some month in 2024, Jonathan will start a GoFundMe for the Mariner's Tale.
Yeah, that's right. Script, film, TV treatment, an entire treatment with all that. Okay.
That's right.
All right.
That's right.
Where was I? Okay. So he heads back to Middle-earth, finds out from Círdan that the elves and the dwarves are being driven back from Eriador by Sauron's forces, right? Because he always looks to Círdan still as sort of his first. He'll go to the Grey Havens first. Just decides, that's where I'd rather talk to the elves first. And Vinland has been pretty disappointing. And it's at this point when he learns that they're driven back, he and Círdan immediately, they decide that they need to build more ships because they need to bring more Númenorians into Eriador. They need to bring more troops, more firepower, essentially. That's not the word. More sword power into Middle-earth. With this in motion, he does return to Númenor to try to set things right with Ankhalime. He decides, being with Círdan gives him some sort of, there's a soothing of the soul to him in that, and so he's softened a little bit in his thoughts towards Ankhalime and his mother in a sense. But when he goes back there, everything, they're all just it's cold and uncaring. There's no repairing of this relationship at this point. It seems that way. And then Ankhalime also at this point has been spending more time with Saranto, as we see, right? She's a little bit older. She's not like he's kind of like taking her under his wing when she goes back to Armenelos. So she's been there for a time. She's kind of becoming the heir. And there is a softening when he's back to her. Eventually, she does soften to him. She respects her father, at least on an intellectual level, for what he's doing, even though she does feel a bit abandoned by him because he wants what's best for Númenor in a way. And
Okay.
she does respect that. Living at least with the love of, her grandfather and her grandmother, she has gotten some of that thought, like Númenor is important and we can't let it. We can't let the evil that drove us out originally, because now it's known it's Sauron, right? The letter has been revealed, so I should have mentioned that. We all know it's Sauron now. That the evil that was defeated by the Númenorians is now coming back. We can't let that evil grab a foothold. So she respects that, even though, they part on better, though uneasy terms, because she's deciding to visit her mother now in Emerie. And Aldarion sets to building more ships. So she leaves and he builds ships instead of cutting down trees. And there is some hope for the future, right? They're setting things right. There's now the ships that they are building, along with the ships that Círdan is going to send over. We'll be able to bring a large force into Middle Earth to help supplement the elves in their battles against what's happening in the east there. All right. So this now, that was years 877 to 888. Not very much time has passed.
Only 11 years.
Only 11 years. Only 11 years. So now we are actually going to skip forward, I decided, to year 930 with Ankalime as a princess shepherdess, essentially. Like, she's older and she's known as that. And we see her interacting more with Hallacar at this point.
Okay.
And despite like her negativity towards men and her, Erendis like treatment of men, she still finds him interesting in some ways, and she sees him, as part of the line of Elros, as she is as well, and so there's some interest there. I wouldn't say they're friendly, but they are acquainted, and she doesn't have many acquaintances in Númenor, thanks to her mother's influence on her life
And her own choices.
and her own choices. Yes. So there are now we go through the process of seeing that she's having suitors, and it's essentially between Sauron and Hallacar for the line. Also, I forgot to mention the last season. This is an Unfinished Tales, but Aldarion has proclaimed her the king's heir, so she is now the king's heir. Everybody knows that, and so her finding a husband is kind of important. And so there are now suitors. Once she's proclaimed the heir, the suitors kind of come out. One being Sauron and one being Hallacar, and Sauron is the foremost suitor. And she does not like strong men, generally, even her father in a way. And so this pretty much irks her. She's not a fan of it. And so she goes and she speaks with her mother about this. And then this is then when we get the men of Númenor, our children speech. And though like the speech is sort of like it's calling out the way she thinks in a way, but she doesn't like it. Like she doesn't appreciate that her mother just makes it so clear that this is why we hate men, because they're just children playing at things. And even though she might see that, right, she respects her father in some ways. She finds her mother even less, like she can't respect her mother for just not thinking well of anyone, even her father. So there's been some repair of the relationship with her father, and I want that triangle of the relationship to be a problem for her. And it's tough for her to realize all that. So
say again, it's tough for her to realize.
It's tough for her to realize the relationship with her mother now at this point, right? And so she leaves, because the way that her mother spoke to her, it's after this point in Unfinished Tales that she really doesn't go back to her mother. That like this speech somehow sets something off in her, where though she doesn't like men, the way that her mother talks about it is almost even worse to her. I don't know. That was my thought. What do you think about that?
Well, interesting to me. Like this is a very human and sort of triangle, which a lot of people that have known divorced parents and lived in those situations can have some callback to. So the relationship of how the broken relationship between the parents affects the child, how much of it is the child's decision, how the child tries to have a relationship with sometimes the child themselves tanks the relationship, and sometimes it's the parents, and sometimes it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. So I was kind of curious as to where you were going to lean into that part of it. Is do we see it? Do we see the broken relationship? Because I can see two angles, for example, with her relationship with her mother. Either the angle of, we see pretty clearly that it's Erendis that's broken primarily, and while Ankalime is also wounded or broken in some ways, she's not as bad as Erendis. Will the show lean into showing all of Erendis' flaws, and basically you can't have a normal relationship with Erendis? Like, basically nobody can have a normal relationship. Obviously men can't, but even women can't have a normal relationship with Erendis. So are you going to lean into that side, the brokenness of Erendis? Or are you going to lean into the other side, where the child makes the decision, like children do often, to say, well, my mom disagrees with my dad, they both don't like each other, so I'm going to not like both of them. and that where it becomes I can see the truth, and they're just both, they're both messed up. Is it going to be that kind of point of view? Is it going to be a mix? How, do you have an angle or an opinion on how to present that?
Yeah. So let me read this paragraph that is said after the famous lines from Erendis, where she says, they dally in the world, children are in mind, their children in mind until age finds them, and then many only forsake play out of doors for play in their houses, where she doesn't she doesn't even respect men at all anymore. Like, any positive vibes she had of men are completely gone. And for Ankalime, here's what Tolkien wrote after this speech. Ankalime, like her father, was resolute in pursuing her policies, and like him, she was obstinate, taking the opposite course to any that was counseled. So she's obstinate, right? So this is what her mother says. So she likes even taking the opposite course from what her mother says, right? She doesn't like to be told what to do. And I think that's clear, because after that, he also writes, she did not refuse the heirship, and determined that when her day came, she would be a powerful ruling queen. Probably because people didn't believe she could be a powerful queen at that point either, because she was obstinate and did the opposite of what people said. And so that's where I'm leaning into it. And so she sees that obstinateness, like there's more of a kinship with her father in that attitude that they have with each other. And so she can respect that a little bit more, rather than her mother, who is she's just alone and lonely, and has become a shadow of who she was when we originally met a few seasons back.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to make Erendis is like, there's no redeeming quality in Erendis at this point anymore in the story, as Tolkien has written it. Right. There's nothing that we can say other than she loves her daughter. There's nothing that we can say that she's doing for the good of the realm, of her family, of the royalty, right? Anything like that. She has become a complete and utter shell of who she was originally, that when Aldarion fell in love with her.
Right. Are you not going to leave any room for her to be a little different at the end of her life?
Well, yeah, shell, but yes. So there's always something inside the shell. There's a little bit of yolk left.
All right, fair enough.
But yeah. I mean, but it's at this point, right? This is sort of the culmination of her change from who she was to who she's become. This speech, and this is when Ankalime leaves her, because it's the end of it.
Right.
And she comes back into the story in season 6. So let's get there. Okay, so he's building more ships. All right, so this here begins, like I said, with Princess Shepherdess. She meets Hallacar. Okay, we're getting into the men of Númenor. You can't trust them. And it's at this point that a ship from Círdan comes. This was not written in Tolkien's line, but we have to move forward with the story in Middle Earth. A ship from Círdan comes bearing ill tidings. The Grey Havens have been attacked. Ships were destroyed. The city was saved at cost. The ships that were built there in the Grey Havens, many of them have been destroyed at this point. And these are, this has been attacked ships from this Eastern army from Sauron. So this spurs Aldarion into action. And it's at this same time, with him leaving now again, Ankalime has to make a choice. Should she marry for the good of the realm, for the line of Elros, or should she follow her own feelings, like her mother, right? That like men are not to be trusted and she can't do anything like that. And so she agrees now to marry Hallacar to her.
I see. So you're using the attack as the spur to her decision.
Yeah. something
Interesting.
she has her responsibility as the heir to Númenor.
That's interesting because I remember that there were multiple paths of why she married Hallacar in Tolkien's writing. He has a couple different versions, and you chose she takes this as this as an opportunity to be kind of reminded of her responsibility, and so does it as a duty.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. She agrees to marry Hallacar, and her she's not exactly happy about it though, but she does it out of duty. Sauron now is particularly grieving to her. She cannot stand him, and so she essentially pushes him out of the royal house, even though he's the grandson of the king, right? Her cousin, and he retreats to his home, and that's kind of the end of Sauron's story at this point. There could be more around his relationship and how what that means in the royal family with Meneldur. Meneldur at this point would 942. He's still alive, so it's at this point that he wouldn't. Is he still alive? No, he might be gone at this point. I don't know where that would fit in exactly. At some point, we have to do that. Might be when she pushes Sauron out, which is when Meneldur passes. So as the defense of Eregion falls apart, so Ancalime essentially falls apart internally, right? So we see the problems both happening in the east. We can cut back to the elves and how they're trying to fight and keep up, and things are getting destroyed. But any hope of a relationship that Ancalime had with Hallacar is falling apart because she just can't. The men are a problem. She just can't stand these petty men who just want the kingship. But she's still torn between a duty for Númenor and that hatred. Also, obviously, Hallacar cannot stand her. And so this leads to that wedding scene that Hallacar has set up with all of the retainers, all the what were they? They were the
women of
attendants. The women of the royal family, right?
Yeah.
And this leads to that wedding scene. So, and it's that night that Ancalime finds out that she's pregnant. And so she cries and laughs in turn. And so that's the scene that we get where she's like laughing alone by herself or crying alone. So there's a little bit more to it at this point, right? She has an heir. And so that is a joy to her, but it's also a problem because she's crying because of this crazy scene that we have with these this wedding happening where he just rubs it in her face. So she retreats to Emeria, where her mother's heart is softened a bit now, knowing she has a grandchild. And she Erendis finds some regret at how things turned out, right? And she looks back and sees the good, fun, happy times that she had with Aldarion. And there's a small hope of reconciliation that creeps out of the corners of her heart. So we see some softening in her now in this at the coming of her grandchild. It's at this point that Aldarion leaves with his fleet, and we see a shadowy figure watch him go. And with fearful eyes and some trembling, she convinces a boatman to follow the fleet, hoping to catch their attention. And when the boatman on the smaller boat can go no further, she pleads with him to keep following. She needs to get there. And in a last desperate, despairing, hopeful moment, she just casts herself in the sea and starts trying to swim out to the boat and is never seen from again. So I thought I'd tie in the air, a little bit of a softening of the heart with that air that the baby brings forth, and that's where she, that hope of reconciliation. She tries to get there in time, but only sees him go and wants to follow, and because she realizes there's nothing left for her now. I mean, you could say that, but she wanted to reconcile. So that's where I'm moving with that.
So I really like it. I mean, I'm going to say something. If anyone has made it to this point of and we have a small and dedicated group of followers, so we're all Tolkien nerds here, but I find it fascinating that the way that you found to show Erendis' love is a little different from the way Tolkien does, because remember, in Tolkien's writing, she has heard that he's about to return, not so, and you have him following her, you have her following him upon his leaving. So Tolkien has it where she has been abandoned by Ancalime, and in her loneliness, her heart softens.
Right.
And she hears that her husband is going to return after a long voyage, and she goes to meet him, basically, and then she's lost. Yeah, it says, of Erendis it is said that when old age came upon her, neglected by Ancalime and in bitter loneliness, she longed once more for Aldarion. And learning that he was gone from Númenor on what proved to be his last voyage, but that
I
he was
totally
soon
misread
expected
that.
to return. She left to marry at last.
Okay,
Journey.
so this is good. So I wrote this all from memory. So when I was going through this, and you're right, I remembered that wrong. She came on his return and not on his leaving. Okay, so how would we change this so for her to do this upon his return?
So she's going in the hopes that she's going to catch him when he does return, whenever that is. So you could actually still have your version where she goes out, she travels in order to meet him, but she the news has reached her in the middle of Númenor. The news has reached her too late. He's actually already returned and outfitted himself quickly and left again. Like
I like that idea.
he's
Yeah.
just on a stop and go voyage, and then so
Yes.
she arrives with the news that he's leaving, and then so you could still have her chase him after him, and because I like what you did there, I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Well, I still think the whole idea of like she was neglected by Encalime, you could say that she was neglected in a sense that like, and maybe in order to say neglected, maybe when she heard of news of the grandchild instead of Encalime visiting her,
Yeah.
we could make that where her heart softens. I like that better. So let's change that. And let's say Encalime does not visit her, but she receives news of the grandchild. And that's the trigger that softens her heart, where she longs once more for Aldarion and those early days of the marriage where things were happier.
Right.
And I like the idea of him coming back, refitting, and then he has to leave.
I mean, he has no clue about her, and in fact, he doesn't even want any contact. He's just there to refit his ships and go, because he's basically abandoned Númenor and the island that now his daughter, who he's estranged from, rules essentially.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So he arrives now at Eriador, and he's shoring up the defenses against Sauron. Sauron has revealed himself, but won't fight. That's one thing we know about him. He generally won't fight.
Yeah.
The men do that for him. These men that have descended into vassalage serfdom.
Sorry, I missed the. Where is he going? Where is he appearing in Middle Earth now?
Well, he would meet up with the elves. So I didn't really nail it down, but it would have to be, if they're pushing in, if the Eastern armies are pushing in, it would be somewhere approaching Ostenethel. So he would probably go up to Gwathlo and meet up with them and try and drive them back from that point with the ships that he has. All right. We can tell that Sauron hates the Númenorians, right? And that's at this point he's close enough. He makes an attempt at Celebrimbor's life, but Celebrimbor escapes with the help of Aldarion. And so we both, I think I like that scene in the sense that it both solidifies his hate of Celebrimbor, because, the way the Celebrimbor dies is he sticks his head on a stake and puts it out there in a battle in the future. But also that his hate of the Númenorians, right? That Aldarion now is the guy that saved Celebrimbor from Sauron.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
He hates both the Númenorians and Celebrimbor even more. So he's now in these battles. Obviously, Aldarion and their forces and the elves are destroying the descendants of those that were his friends years ago, and they're destroying. Like they're starting to push forward. They're driving Sauron back. They have victories, and in time, we can flesh this out however we need to in an actual treatment. They drive Sauron back into the east, and he retreats to Mordor. And it's at this point, this is now. This would be around the year, around the year 1000. And I know at this point I'm kind of I've messed up the timeline of Hallacar and Encalime and Erendis when she dies, but I think that works. But it's at this point that we see him begin construction of Barad-dûr. It's the year 1000, which is essentially starts. He realizes he needs something better and bigger than what he had, just relying on these men and their small towns and everything like that. He's going to build his own fortress now and not rely on anything else. And so the foundations of Barad-dûr are laid at this point after their victory. So Aldarion, he now heads back to Númenor. This is about the year 1000. He's an older man. He's wizened by war. But he's hopeful because he's also now, he got word of the imminent birth of his grandchild. And so in a callback to the initial scene where we see these young boots jumping off a ship, we see these older boots jumping off a ship onto land with a bit of a slower run. And in the same room that he was born in, right? In the original one, it's his uncle coming in to see the child, right? The one who loves the sea. Why can't I remember his name now?
Starts with a V.
Veantur?
Yeah,
Veantur, right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. It's him that's running into the same room that he was born in, and he sees Hallacar there. Hallacar is completely silent. He can't really meet his eyes. He averts his eyes from his father-in-law, but we hear a baby cry, and Aldarion comes in, And he smiles at his daughter. She smiles back to him, and she says to him, "Father, the heir to Númenor, the heir of Elros." And then he holds his grandson with a smile, and he looks on his heir, and there seems to be hope for the future with the true heir of Númenor. And that's where we end. That's where we end right there. So that's the highest up note on a story we could end with, is that there's hope for the future. Not that things get any better necessarily with they don't actually like go back to Middle Earth much after this, but
right, because
end with that.
Well, so you're going to have another 70 years or so, 75 years of
his reign.
Of his, well, not his reign. When does he hand over reign to?
1075 is when, and she's. So this would be around the year one. Anarion is born in 1003, so that's 72 years later.
Okay,
that she would take the scepter.
Okay. And
it's let's see, it's pardon me, it's 125 years after that Anatar comes to Lindon. And so it's at that point that Sauron has had 200 years of building Barad-dûr, and
it's funny because
it's at that point that Númenorians do construct permanent havens on the shores of Middle Earth, and so it is at that point that's 85 years before An-Calimé dies, and 80 years before Anarion takes the scepter. The heir that we see born here at the end takes the scepter. So there is some time in there that nothing really happens other than it's peaceful and happy in Middle Earth.
Well, yeah, there's a reprieve, right? Right. What's so cool about that, and it makes it good because of course, for everyone listening, or for most people listening, they will know that obviously we're here in a stage where the mind of people in the 21st century about this time in Middle Earth is being formed by this crass abuse of Tolkien, which is called Rings of Power. And what's cool to me is that in your story, you're emphasizing the fact that Sauron's already took a shot at the elves.
Yeah. And what was the impetus for building Barad-dûr at that point? Why would what drove him to start that?
Well before the rings were crafted.
Right. This is that point where everything that's in that letter we never really learn about the details and everything after that, but clearly there's some import and the reason that why would Aldarion feel the need to immediately get back to Middle Earth to help the elves? Something in that letter, right, drove him forward, and so we're kind of fleshing that out in the last 2 seasons of what that might look like.
Cool. I really like it. You did a yeoman's work there.
Oh, well, thank you. It was fun. I wouldn't ever deign to say let's change everything Tolkien wrote, even like where I'm like, oh, but the birth of Anarion and the death of Erendis, like they're not quite right, and we could, if we really wanted to be 100% right with that, I just like the idea that there is some trigger to soften her a little bit, to make her think of Aldarion in better ways than she has, because otherwise you still have to come up with something. Something has to change her mind. Like, she can't just all of a sudden think like, oh, okay, now I just miss those days.
Well, and to be fair, about the ending of this story, Tolkien had a number of paths that he changed his mind on and never really landed. This is all part of the crafting of the work, and you're staying true to his work. And even if there do have to be things, it's a one thing to choose to fill in where Tolkien's hand never completed. It's quite another thing when Tolkien's hand completed something and people are coming in and saying, well, but it should be better this other way.
Yeah, right. Yeah, these 400 years, let's just compress it down to 2 years.
Yeah, and let's pretend
give them great lines like, give me the meat and give it to me raw, right? We'll rewrite what he said and how he would have treated these characters. Yeah, no, we're not going to do that. But we will get that apparently later this year. Apparently they said it'll be coming out, Rings of Power Season 2, sometime in 2024.
Yeah.
You know why that's important? That's about 6 months before we get an In-N-Out here in Tennessee. So I'm just counting the days down. It's just another.
What's the connection between In-N-Out?
No, it just means that we're closer to the time we get an In-N-Out here in Tennessee.
Oh,
it's great,
right.
Yeah. If all of you don't know In-N-Out, it's the one thing I miss about California.
When is the first In-N-Out?
It should be sometime 2025, like spring, I think, of 2025. They have their eastern headquarters are going to be right up the road, like 6 miles away from my house. So
nice.
It'll be easy to go and get a good burger finally. And it's not there's great Nashville hot chicken here. It's just not great burgers here, really.
Well, as far as headquarters from a business perspective, your state has an advantage, one of 9. states in that
No
regard.
state income tax. Yeah. Yes. One big reason I'm here. Okay. So I hope you guys like that. If you think I screwed up somewhere, let me know. Comments. You can always email me at jonathan@thewondering.com too. Or you can join us at our Discord chat. Just become a member, click the link below, and join our freeloader channels. Or if you want to become a member for $4 a month, or $5 on Patreon. I think if you just go to wondering.com/member, if I have the Patreon link ready, you can just go to it from there too. Otherwise, if you probably look for Exploring Tolkien or The Wondering on Patreon, you'll find that too. That'll be $5. I'll have to update this little graphic right here. But yeah, we'd love to have you join us and get the extended edition where we're going to be talking about pipew-eed and those ugly pukel men from Return of the King.
Woses.
Druedain. And some couple great questions from Thomas and Essie. So we'll get into that. I hope you guys join us there. We'll see you on the other side.
Take care, freeloaders.